You're watching Council Wrap Up. We're here with the top news of the Montgomery County Council for the month of January. Up first this month, several members of the Montgomery County Council have sponsored a resolution that would create a commission that would support the Equal Justice Institute's memorial project. On the heels of a day of service in recognition of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.,
bringing forward the history
Council members Hans Riemer,
America's struggle with racism.
Will Jawando,
when we celebrate Dr. King is that he was a victim of this domestic terrorism that has its roots in hatred.
And Craig Rice,
that civil rights was something that was afforded to all people.
Introduced a resolution to establish a Remembrance and Reconciliation Commission. Its goal, to bring the community and agencies together to support the Equal Justice Institute's memorial project.
The Equal Justice Institute, founded by Brian Stevenson, has a foundation in Montgomery, Alabama.
When I teach my students about African American history, I tell them about slavery. I tell them about terrorism, the era that began at the end of Reconstruction that went on to World War II.
That is dedicated to bringing forward the history of America's struggle with racism, slavery, segregation, lynching, racial terrorism, and bringing that dialogue forward to achieve reconciliation and understanding.
In many parts of the country, we memorialize the people that either advocated for or participated in these horrible acts of terrorism against African Americans, but we do not memorialize or remember the victims. We have a specific name for this type of systematic domestic terrorism and murder of African Americans. One of the most heinous forms of it is called lynching. But I think that word falls short of conveying the sheer brutality, the terror, the grotesque and violent nature of these public murders.
The commission will be comprised of 10 public members who will be confirmed by the council as well as ex officio members. There will be one representative from 8 different county agencies, including the Human Rights Commission and the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project.
This issue of history is sometimes very difficult. It is truth sometimes that allows us to really move forward, even when we have most difficult conversations about that history. It is our hope then that with this resolution that we're able then to put together a team of folks to look at Montgomery County's history critically, honestly, right forthly.
I think this weird political moment that we're in kind of has led people to realize that no one is going to take us by the hand and lead us to the garden of racial reconciliation. This is something we have to do for ourselves. And I think people feel empowered to do that, to acknowledge the past, to tell the awful truth that has to be told before reconciliation can occur.
The county's Office of Human Rights will provide support staff to the commission.
We'll bring together not only our schools and our Arts and Humanities Commission and our college and our county government, but also community leaders.
And annual reports of its activity will be given to both the council and executive. The first community conversation with Councilmember Andrew Friedson had an excellent turnout, with questions on issues most important to the constituents he represents in District 1. It was a cold winter night, but that did not discourage more than 100 District 1 residents from coming out to Burning Tree Elementary School for a community conversation with their new council member, Andrew Friedson.
Good evening. Been on the job since December 3rd, and I want to welcome you to our first community conversation.
There was no shortage of questions for the discussion.
Just a whole host of issues.
Residents wanted to know the status of historic cemeteries,
which is the preservation and protection of mostly historic burial sites.
Education funding,
more PEP teachers. That's our preschool education program for preschool students with special needs.
and where things stand with air traffic noise.
I have lived in this neighborhood going on 25 years, and I used to be able to sleep in the summertime with my windows open. Now at 6 o'clock in the morning, without fail, ba-boom, 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 I have earplugs and a pillow over my head, and I still hear it.
I'm really glad you brought it up. It's a huge issue. I was at the Quiet Skies Coalition meeting last week. The leaders of the Quiet Skies Coalition came in to meet. It was one of the first meetings we had. You may know, but some of you may not. We appropriated $125,000 on our end, are partnering with our friends in Northern Virginia, in Arlington, to have $125,000 from their end to be able to leverage the money more, to get more hours out of an airspace expert. The idea is we don't have the expertise at the county to come up with viable alternatives, and it's unfair to ask community leaders who have done yeoman's work and have been absolutely incredible to be expert.
Another hot button issue, pedestrian safety.
And it does feel like pedestrians are really the last priority of both the Parks Department as well as other construction companies. Bethesda pays a lot of lip service to pedestrian safety and walkability. I don't see it.
Friedson told the audience while on the council he wants to be proactive and address quality of life issues for his constituents.
The good news is moving forward, there's going to be more of a focus on the, as the projects go through, and we've had a lot of conversations on how we can do an even better job on balancing the safety issues with pedestrian access.
Climate change, as you know, is increasing, and there's continuing to worsen, as you know. So my question is simply, are you aware of the report, particularly a countywide climate action plan to address these problems?
If we're going to ask folks to make an effort to lower their CO2 emissions, the county should lead. Climate is a perfect example of it, but if we're going to ask residents, if we're going to ask businesses to do things to incentivize, the greater good and the public interest, then we ought to be leading those efforts.
Even though the discussion focused on plenty of critical issues, there were moments where Friedson acknowledged his new status.
If you figured out a way to do that, I'd appreciate it.
With a bit of self-deprecating humor.
The second full day I was in office, the first day was a full council session. They made us vote the next morning. We were fully briefed, don't worry about it.
In the end, Councilmember Friedson walked away from the event.
Look forward to you staying in touch.
With new connections and an even greater appreciation for the community he serves.
You really can't know what's going on in your community unless you're in the community. And you learn a lot more from listening than you do from talking.
So I wanted to know what you're going to do to increase mental health resources in our high schools.
We absolutely need more funding for it. And so tonight really was about that. I answered questions as best as I could, but really the value was hearing from constituents about what issues they really care about. What are the problems that are going on in their communities? What are the opportunities that we have to do better, to do more, and to really build on what has always made Montgomery County such a special place and was always made District 1 one of the best communities anywhere in America.
Also this month, Councilmember Will Juwando donated the Agbada that he wore during the council inauguration ceremony to Montgomery History, the county's historic society. He gifted the garment to honor his late father and highlight his family roots.
We're heading into the Montgomery History Conference to donate my Agbada that I wore for inauguration.
Mr. William Opeyemi Juwando.
So it's a pretty exciting morning.
About a week after the election, I went to the council office building for some orientation. May have come into contact with some of the security guards that work there, many of whom are immigrants themselves, several of whom are West African immigrants. On this day, there were two gentlemen that were there, both from West Africa, one from Nigeria, one from Cameroon. When I explained to him my name and that I was a second-generation Nigerian elected to the council, he asked me, "What will you wear to your inauguration?" The other one immediately said, "You will wear traditional clothing." He said it not as a question, but as a statement, almost as if it was a foregone conclusion and that there was no other option. And immediately, and Cecily, my chief of staff who's here, was with me, I said to her, "I have to wear an Agbada." I knew in that moment, almost as if my father was standing next to me, that I had to honor him and honor the heritage. It felt almost divine that the generations of my ancestors and his ancestors were with me in that moment. When we all come from different cultures, it's really important that we respect and welcome differences, even when those differences come in ways we don't anticipate or even understand. So by wearing this Agbada, this traditional West African clothing in a public setting to take the public oath of office,
is part of a bigger and public dialogue that I think is needed if we are to understand and respect our differences and move forward.
With more than 42,000 veterans living in Montgomery County, officials here make it a priority to have the best services available to those heroes. Recently, a new VA community clinic opened its doors right here in the county, and it's giving veterans an option in receiving health care closer to home. Life has become a bit easier for veteran Cecilia Roland Faria. No longer will she have to spend most of her day receiving medical care from the Veterans Administration.
When I used to go to Martinsburg, it was like 30, depending on traffic. And then to Washington, D.C., it was even worse. But here, when I found out, I called, and the same day I got an appointment for the next day. I was like, oh, I love that. Yeah. So, and it's been like that. Every time I call to make an appointment, I usually get it the next day. Oh, wow. I don't have to wait a lot.
The same holds true for the thousands of veterans who live in Montgomery County. The Department of Veterans Affairs has opened a state-of-the-art clinic in Gaithersburg, giving county veterans an option to receive health care closer to home.
We provide women's health service. Also, we provide internal medicine or family practice. We also have mental health and behavioral health. Along with that, we also have nutritionists and social worker that is on board.
The opening of the clinic comes after years of planning and community collaboration. Councilmember Gabe Albornoz chairs the Health and Human Services Committee.
How's this facility been working out for you?
Great.
He says it's our duty to provide this access to the many veterans who have served our country.
The audiologists come by here once a week at least.
Wow. We've worked hard to end veteran homelessness here in Montgomery County. We're doing that through partnerships and alliances, just like the one we have here. We're serving more than 42,000 veterans residing in Montgomery County. And I'm honored to have the opportunity to chair a committee that will play hopefully a, maybe not so small, but maybe even a larger part in to provide more support in a variety of different ways, because it is our responsibility.
When the clinic opened late last year, the initial thought was most of the patients would be from Montgomery County. However, Bandong says they are seeing clients from Frederick County and Northern Virginia. The clinic is the 5th satellite facility in the region. Walk-in appointments are welcome, and there is 24/7 after-hours support for those who might need it.
It is very critical because that's something that the healthcare system didn't put too much emphasis in the past. But now the VA, as far as we are on the forefront in trying to help our veterans and also our population, to help them with the mental health behavioral issues.
Montgomery County has stepped in with support by providing transportation to the clinic free of charge, and signage was installed to help veterans navigate their trip to the clinic.
Ever since we reached out to the Montgomery County government, they were able to make some provision that the transportation will be available from 6:30 in the morning out to 8 in the evening every 30 minutes. And that is very, very wonderful. It's like we're partnering with the county government, and we love that concept. And hopefully there'll be more that can be extended to us, particularly, especially to our veterans.
When you walk through the door, you just feel welcomed, and I certainly did as I walked through, and nobody knew who I was. And so they're doing a phenomenal service here, and I just couldn't be prouder of the partnership and impressed by the operation.
It's a partnership that's a win-win, especially for Cecilia Roland Faria.
Yes, a lot. I'm really grateful that they opened this clinic here. And I mean, I really was waiting for this clinic to open. I was like, when I finally found out that it was open, I said, oh, thank you.
Well, that does it for this edition of Council Wrap-Up. For more information on the work of the County Council, visit the webpage. For County Cable Montgomery, I'm Susan Kennedy.